My name is Reba Nance, and I'm the Director of Law Practice Management and Risk Management for the Colorado Bar Association. And I want to welcome you to today's Tech Tuesdays webinar entitled How to Secure Your Wireless Network. We're very fortunate today to have Sue Borges as our speaker. Sue was a CBA member. She was a practicing lawyer for 10 years, and she's been working in IT for the last 19 years. Most recently, she owned her own IT business, and she's currently the Rocky Mountain Territory Manager for Novacoast, a national company that provides outsourced IT services. Today's topic is really timely. Wireless has become almost a necessity, and with that comes the difficulty of trying to maintain client confidentiality if you are using a network that is not secure. We will finish at precisely 12:30. If you have any questions, please email them to me, reban@cobar.org, and we'll get those to Sue after the fact. Unfortunately, the technology that we're using to record that does not allow us to accept those at the moment that the speaker is speaking. So thanks again, and Sue, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, great. So thanks everybody for tuning in. And basically I just wanted to tell you that this isn't going to be a nuts and bolts presentation just because every wireless router is different. I think the goal here is to provide you with some ideas for how to keep things secure, how to get things secure, and then the actual implementation of it. Some of you may be able to do on your own, others may need to have somebody help you with it. But anyway, so what do we hope to achieve with wireless security? In a lot of cases, people are in an environment where they can't do wired, or with the proliferation of mobile devices, iPads and iPhones and other smartphones, there's a need for that mobility, the convenience that wireless provides us. But as Reba pointed out, there's definitely some potential drawback. So the problem is that, you know, with a wired network, you don't have prying eyes. Everybody's on the wire. But with a wireless, you certainly have much more exposure. And so you always have to weigh that risk against the convenience of having it. In some cases, there is no choice. You need to have the wireless. And so in any case, what the hope here is to give you an idea about how you can set up a wireless that meets your security needs. So the first rule, don't make it obvious to outsiders that you have a wireless network. Unless you're Starbucks or somebody else who needs people to know that you have a wireless. If you're a coffee shop, obviously you want people to know you have a wireless. So you hide the SID, the service set identifier, or you can make it something that's unrecognizable, in other words, something not connected to you. So what the SID is, everybody should be familiar with that. When you have your laptop or other wireless device and it says there are wireless networks available, it's that list that you see of wireless, well, it's the names on that list that you see that the wireless network is available. So if I'm sitting in Panera's, it's going to tell me Panera Wireless, or if I'm in the hotel at the Holiday Inn, it'll say Holiday Inn or HI or something like that, wireless. So as I said, if you're Panera or Starbucks, you want people to know how to connect to you. You want people to see the SID. If you're a law firm, that's not necessarily the case. So the disadvantage, though, to hiding the SID is that it's a lot harder to configure the device because somebody gets that message that there are wireless networks available on their laptop or their phone, and they click to open up and they look at the list and they won't see your network listed. So it's a situation of when you hide the SID, you're going to have to tell somebody what it is, and they're going to have to manually input it. So if the devices that access your network don't change frequently, what you can do is you keep the SID unhidden when you configure it, configure all of your devices, and then go ahead and hide it. And you can always bring it back up. You can always unhide the SID whenever you've got new devices to put into play, but you don't want to be doing this if you have a network that changes on a regular basis. So if you have a lot of people connecting to your wireless, then probably you want to choose a different option. But the other argument would be that a lot of times when people say they've got a lot of people connected to their wireless, it's because their wireless, they need outsiders to connect to the internet. And so we'll talk about that a little bit later, about having both a public and a private wireless. But for right now, assume we're talking about your private wireless, and that shouldn't have an ever-changing group of people. So you should be able to hide your SID. Okay, so the other option, making it unrecognizable, if you decide for whatever reasons you don't want to hide your SID. I had a great experience once. I was setting up a wireless in a doctor's office, and I was looking at what, in setting up the devices on the wireless, I was seeing a list of all the wirelesses that were available within range. And one of them said police department. And I thought, that just seems really stupid to me. Why would the police department want people to know that's their wireless? It's like, I don't know. To me, that would encourage hackers. Ooh, let me see if I can hack the police department. So I just recommend, especially if you have sensitive information on your network, and I would argue probably everybody has sensitive information on their network, that you don't put anything down that identifies it to you. So I've given you some examples on the slide here. Just come up with something that you know will relate to you, but that won't be obvious to everybody else. And then the final word on the SID is don't ever leave the device configured with the factory SID. So a lot of the devices come with something that identifies it as what brand device it is. And that's the issue. So like you get a Cisco router and it says Cisco 523 or something like that on it. Well, now the whole world knows you have a Cisco wireless router, and if they know, especially if you haven't changed the default passwords, excuse me. So especially if you've changed the default, if you haven't changed the default passwords, which again is something I'll talk about later, somebody can try and hack into your wireless router and get control over it because they know what the default username and password is because they're familiar with the model. So what if I want others to access my wireless network? And I alluded to this before, that you can either get a device that has the ability to create a separate public wireless network, and it would be firewalled through the device itself. So the device says, I'm going to create a firewall between the internal wireless and the external wireless. I'm going to put them on different subnets, and that's a technical term, but basically you can't talk across subnets without something that helps you to do that. So it will set up a different, basically an IP addressing system that's different for the public versus the private wireless. So you can get that nowadays even on some of the less expensive devices. It used to be that if you wanted that, you had to buy a fairly high-end device. Now, some of even the lower-end devices have that ability. I've seen them in the Belkins and in the Ciscos and some of the Netgears. So if you don't, though, or if you have an older wireless and you want to have people from outside access the internet, at least from your office space or from your home, then buy a second wireless and put it behind your firewall. And of course, I'm just making a huge assumption that you actually have a firewall. If it's your office, you should. If it's your home, not too many people have firewalls in their own home. So that's kind of a judgment call, but at least maybe an inexpensive firewall. Or if you have a separate internet router that has multiple LAN connections, you actually could put one on a different LAN connection and then configure it to be on a different, you can keep one on your inside LAN connection and you can change the address on the other one for outside access. So there are different ways to do it. If anybody wants more information on that, it's not, I could spend a lot of time on this. You feel free to contact me. I'll give you my contact information at the end of this.
Sue, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
If somebody wants to buy one of the routers that you mentioned that has all of this built in and they go to the store, what terminology are they looking for? if they go up to the salesperson and say, I want to buy a router? Or...
It'll be a dual, well, it's not a dual speed, but it'll tell you, it'll like be either dual networks or it'll say public and private networks. Okay. So it should say it on the box, something to that extent that would allow you to know that it's capable of doing two separate wireless networks.
Okay, thanks.
So the second rule, change the admin username and password on the wireless router for the reasons that I mentioned before. You don't want anybody to be able to alter the security settings on your router, so you can make it as secure as you want, but if the one thing you miss is the administrator username and password, and you stick with the defaults for setup, somebody can just come in and set it up any way they want to and allow themselves access. So it's kind of it seems like it'd be a pretty basic rule, but you have no idea how many times I've walked into a situation where somebody never changed the admin user and password. So they've got WPA, high-level security, but to get onto the router itself, if I have access to their network, I can get onto the router, I can change everything. Third rule, WPA2 encryption. So when you set up these routers, you're usually given a bunch of different options. And these are the three types. You get WPA or WPA2. Any more WPA is less common. The newer routers are all WPA2. And you have two versions of that. You have enterprise and you have personal. So enterprise only works if you have a server on premises that can do what they call radius authentication. And that's something that's pretty techy. So if you have a server, presumably you have an IT person who can work on it. And you would ask them to set up the radius services, and then you could configure your router to connect. So what it does is essentially it requires anybody who logs into the wireless to actually log into the network. You use your username and password from the network, and that's what allows you in. So anybody who is not a user on the network by default would not be allowed in if you use WPA2 Enterprise or WPA Enterprise. WPA, WPA2 Personal, again, WPA is dropping off. WPA2 is more common now. Is not quite as good as Enterprise in terms of what you can do with it, but it's still a fairly secure wireless protocol. WEP is what we started out with back in the days when wireless first got started. It's wired equivalent proxy, and pretty much these days the rule of thumb is that it's not secure at all. It can be hacked in about 2 minutes. Somebody can get can figure out your WEP password. So, and that's with 128-bit encryption. So, not recommended at all. WPA, WPA2, or WPA, WPA2 Enterprise. We already went through WEP can be hacked in minutes. WPA and WPA2 are only hackable if you use dictionary words. So you want to stay away from, you have to create, when you set up your wireless network, you have to create a passphrase to go with it. And you want something that's memorable, although frankly you don't have to use it more than once usually. For every device that you're setting up, you should only have to use it once. But rather than have to look it up, if you want something that you can remember, you can create a phrase, but substitute numbers, substitute special characters like an exclamation point or a pound sign, so that it's a little bit more difficult. The dictionaries that the hackers use are not, it's not, Webster's. They have hacker dictionaries which basically have a lot of different combinations that do include numbers and letters. So it's harder for them, though, and those dictionaries are expanding on an almost daily basis. So the better your passphrase, the less chance that anything's going to happen. But certainly the best thing to do is have a longer passphrase, definitely more than 8, probably 16 to 24 characters, and something that's not so easy to figure out, and certainly nothing related to who you are or your pet's names or anything like that, which is the same rule of thumb for any kind of passwording for anything that you want to keep secure. And then the WP Enterprise, I've already talked about using radius services. Fourth rule is control access to the private side of your network. So another way to do this is to only allow access to registered MAC addresses. MAC addresses are hardwired into your devices. So every phone has its own unique MAC address. Every network card has its own unique MAC address. And it's a little bit trickier because you have to know where to find that information. But generally, if you look at, if it's a laptop, you can see the MAC address information. It's those things that look like they're a bunch of letters separated by colons. So like AA colon, DF colon, 00 colon. If you see those are MAC addresses. And you usually see them in the properties of your network card. And on your phone, if you look at, for those of you who have set up your phone with your car, the Bluetooth, you see something similar. And that would be the Bluetooth MAC address, but you would have something similar for the wireless. And so if you look in your wireless settings, usually it will give you the wireless address of your phone device as well. And so almost all of the devices now, even the lower end devices that are available, have a way, if you go into the advanced setup functions, have a way for you to register MAC addresses. Once you do that, well, there's two ways you can deal with MAC addresses. You can exclude all but the MAC addresses you input, or you can include. What am I trying to say? You can exclude all but what you include by putting the MAC addresses down, or you can exclude particular MAC addresses. So if you know that there are certain devices you don't want on your network, you would exclude them. But I would say that's a harder job because you can't exclude. It's easier to say, I want to exclude everybody but the ones that I've got listed here. Fifth rule, monitor your environment. So one of the other things that is quite common, especially in larger offices, is people who bring in their own wireless routers or access points. And they just plug it right into the Ethernet jack in the wall because they just decided they need wireless access either for their phone or for their iPad. And so they'll plug it into the wall jack and they'll set it up. And they won't necessarily set it up securely. And once there's one in there, it compromises the whole network. So there are ways to periodically check. You can, visually check. You also can, there are applications for your cell phone. If you just look under Wi-Fi in Google Play or Apple iTunes Store, you will find these apps that tell you how to discover wireless networks. And so what you can do is you should know which networks, which wirelesses are in your environment. It's a little bit harder if you're in an office building and you share a floor with other people because you will probably see all of their wireless devices as well. But once you get used to looking and you see the same wireless devices all the time, you'll know when something new crops up that might be an alert for you to check. And it might not be in your office, it might be in somebody else's, but it's worth a physical check once you discover something like that. And so there should always be an office policy to not allow non-approved access points. There are also devices out there that will detect, that are themselves wireless routers that will also detect other wireless signals on the same network and will help you determine if it's a rogue, so to speak. So then the next question is, do you have a high need for security? A lot of people have, I guess, poo-pooed doing much with their wireless because, we're not really concerned. Nobody's going to want to hack us. But you do have to be careful where HIPAA compliance is concerned, or SOX compliance, or also if you have access to data that others want, so social security numbers or credit card information. And I would say probably on your home network, you probably have some of that because most people do online banking and have information on their home network in some fashion. I do keep my credit card information encrypted in a database. but sometimes I type it out, and if you type it out and you've got anybody sniffing on your network, that could potentially be an issue. So to me, everybody has somewhat of a high need for security. The question is, obviously, the truly high security comes at a price, and so you have to figure out what the reasonable price is for you. And I think by implementing the stuff that I've talked about, so hiding the SID, to go back, hiding the SID, WPA encryption, and setting up the MAC addresses, and then creating a separate, if you have a need for outsiders to access, setting up a private wireless will fulfill pretty much, I think, anybody's basic security obligations. If you feel like you really have a lot that you need to take care of, then there are other things that you can look at. So that's what I call going the extra mile. And we've got so there is wireless dedicated hardware that you can use. There's a product from Cisco called Meraki, and it actually will do all of that monitoring. It's manageable through a web browser. If you have a bigger office and you need multiple units, you can put in multiple units and it will manage those. It also has a separator for public and private. It also will manage other devices. So if you have pre-existing wireless, it won't fully manage it, but you can at least see it and see what it's doing, and make sure that it's on the right network and make sure that it has the right security settings. So it allows you to see into the security settings of every device on your network, both the end devices, so the laptops, the desktops, the phones, the tablets, and also the other routers that might be in your environment. This would also be good for helping you if you needed to discover rogue wireless out there. That would also be a tool to help you. Another option is Dell's Sonic Wall wireless firewalls and access points. They all work together. They are, though, a proprietary solution, so unlike the Meraki, they won't see anybody else's devices. You'll know potentially that there are other wireless devices out there. It might point to that, but you won't be able to see what the settings on those devices are. And those provide a little bit more security for you. The Sonic Wall, if you're just needing one wireless device, the Sonic Wall may be the less expensive way to go. But again, not as comprehensive as the Meraki. And I'm sure there are other things out there. These are the two that I happen to be familiar with and have worked with. And they're both fairly easy to work with. Again, web management interfaces. So the one nice thing about all of this is that the routers and the firewalls now all have really nice visuals. So if you can open a web browser, you can pretty much follow instructions for basic setup. But if you want anything more secure, it's always a good idea to have somebody who has a little bit more experience with these products to take a look at them and make sure they're configured correctly. And it wouldn't take very long for somebody probably to go through it and make sure that the proper security settings are in place. And I think that's all I had, and we're about a minute away from 12:30. So, Reba, I don't know if you have any other questions?
You know, I do have a quick one. I watched a program a long time ago at an ABA tech show. This was years ago. And a security expert was giving a presentation, and live he pulled up a website. I believe it was a website. And what he was able to do was to put in the IP address of his laptop, and he was able to tell if people were actually trying to hack in. And we were able to watch it live. I know this is slightly different, but are you aware of any websites that people can go to where they can test the security of their system or their firewall? You know, I know Shields Up used to be one. I don't know if it's still working, but are you aware of any?
Not off the top of my head. I know that they exist. Yeah, I mean, and how accurate they are, I don't know, but I'm guessing they would catch some of it. They won't necessarily catch all of it. But it's something I haven't thought about in a while, actually. So.
Well, I think Shields
don't
Up
have
is
any site.
still up, and I think if you just Google that, again, I haven't looked at it in years, but that was one
Yeah.
that did allow you to at least take a look.
Yep, and I do remember seeing that a long time ago, and I know that there's other stuff out there, but
Mhm.
I have not actually looked into that.
Okay. Well, again, thank you so much, Sue. This has really been helpful. And if folks are interested, Sue, can you give your email address and folks can email you with questions?
Yeah, the best way here. Let's see. I'll see if I can just put it up on the screen. Oh, let's see. Can I? Probably could just pull up Notepad and do it that way. What have we got on here? Yeah.
It could be under it might be under
Yeah, I know.
accessories.
I'm just having difficulty for some reason running the
Okay.
running the cursor. I don't know why. Okay, so it's Borges at Novacoast.com. I don't know. I hope people can read that. It's a little on the small side. And if anybody wants to call me, you can call me directly on my cell phone too. That's the number right there.
Okay, and we're going to cut Sue some slack. This is not her laptop, so.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Sue, and I hope folks will let us know if there are topics you'd like to see. I'm really excited for the next program, and I forgot to write down the date. It is Doug McQuiston, who is going to talk about using tablets, and he's going to concentrate on whether or not you can give up your laptop yet and just use your tablet, and how close are we to that. He'll talk about some of the security issues as well. It's should be the fourth Tuesday of the month, so it'll be the fourth Tuesday in October, and I apologize, I forgot to check it ahead of time. So thanks again, Sue. We were excited to have you, and if folks have any other suggestions, please let me know, and we will have this up and available for folks to download and listen to hopefully sometime tomorrow. So thanks again, everyone. Feel free to email me if you have any questions, rebaN@cobar.org.